We have always, as a continent, been mixed out of our resources because of the exchange rate of a printed paper called the dollar. We got good news that Ghana is at it again. They're dumping the dollar for gold, and this is for real. It's not like it's a hearsay. It's something like this. Are we sure about this? Are we sure Ghana can do this? Are we sure about this? Are we sure about that? Now listen to this. We'll be right back.
The government of Ghana has directed all large-scale mining firms to divest 20% of their entire stock of refined gold at their refineries to the country's central bank. Ghana's Vice President Mahamadou Bawumia has announced that the directive forms part of the country's efforts to use gold to purchase oil products. This global trend of dumping the United States dollar has been reflected since the beginning of this year. Many countries in the world are adopting a diversified strategy on their foreign exchange reserves, further reducing the share of the US dollar.
The Vice President of Ghana elaborates on the decision to use gold instead of US dollar reserves in purchasing oil products.
It is very simple. This is because the exchange rate, whether you are looking at the spot exchange rate or the forward exchange rate, will no longer directly enter the formula for the determination of fuel or utility prices once we implement this, because the purchases of fuel and for transport and utility is going to be in cedis. It's not going to be in dollars. So because you're buying that fuel with gold, that is where the exchange takes place. But once you sell that fuel, you sell it in cedis. And then the Bank of Ghana uses those cedis to buy more gold and buy the oil, you sell it, and then it goes around in that way. But essentially, you are taking the exchange rate out of the equation.
The decision of Ghanaian government to decide to use their own massive deposit of gold reserve in exchange for international trade and transactions makes a whole lot of sense. That is the way forward for Africa. And it's one of the reasons why I keep calling Africans to look into how we can join the BRICS as a collective whole, because they are trying to offer this alternative transactive model. Even if you look at the West, you see both France, Germany, and especially United States of America and Great Britain are amassing gold reserve, because eventually the dollar is going to lose value. It's continuing to lose value. People are beginning to look inward. When Ghana is even termed by the colonial masters as a gold coast because of the massive gold deposit in that country, why will Ghana depend on dollar to survive its economy when it has the gold? Decision of Ghanaian government is very fantastic. The BRICS way is the best way for all Africans.
Right? No, the good thing about this is that when US was waiting eagerly for Ghana to come ask for loan, ask for money for this. Yes, they need money from where? From the World Bank to do this, to do that. Boom, Ghana just shocked them with their no dollar policy. These steps alone that they have taken has a positive and negative effect. The negative effect is something that will not last long, but the positive one is going to last. The negative one is that the only thing that the US can do is to look for ways to sanction them, to look for ways to make things difficult for the government, of course, which it is visible, it's seen already in the way things are. It might be difficult for the moment, but the future will be better, of course. And it's also a message to them that as Africans, African countries in Africa, we can also decide on what we want. Now, if our leaders are ready to make the sacrifice, and if we ourselves are ready to suffer a little bit for the future to be better, not just for ourselves but for our children as well. Now listen to this man who explained to some point in depth of what dumping the dollar for gold is going to be for Ghana and for Africa as well.
You see here, Ghana is probably one of the most safest and most peaceful countries in Africa. Them making this move will cause civil unrest, funded by the West and the EU, because they're ditching the dollar. They already are backing out of the coca deal that they've been doing. They want to start manufacturing chocolate in their countries that are selling the raw materials for it. There's a lot of things going on in Ghana to make them more independent from international trade that's going to piss off the EU and the West. So if you see anything crazy in the next 2 to 3 years going on in Ghana, please know it's not the government, it's not the people, it's literally United States and the EU trying to destroy this country.
For transport and utility is going to be in cities. It's not going to be in dollars. So because you're buying that fuel with gold, that is where the exchange takes place. But once you sell that fuel, you sell it in cities. And then the Bank of Ghana uses those cities to buy more gold and buy the oil, you sell it, and then it goes around in that way. But essentially, you are taking the exchange rate out of the equation. Today, our fuel prices are being priced at an exchange rate, a forward exchange rate of 19 cedis to the US dollar. Today, what we are paying at the pump is being priced at 19 cedis to the US dollar. So you can imagine when you price without the exchange rate in the formula, which is what is going to happen. We've already done some simulations. Then you will see that the prices of fuel will come down. And similarly, for PURC, if the exchange rate doesn't enter the equation, which it shouldn't because the transactions will be in cedis, similarly, then electricity tariffs will also have to come down. Because what you are now going to see, because one of the biggest, when you look at what drives fuel price increases, what drives electricity price increases, and therefore the cost of doing business, it's fundamentally the exchange rate. Major driver of these price increases. So if you are able to have a handle on the exchange rate movement, you are able to lower the depreciation of the currency at the same time as you lower this. And you are going to lower the depreciation of the currency because instead of the oil importers, especially the BDCs, going to the Bank of Ghana's window every few weeks to ask for foreign exchange to import oil, that one goes away. So we are saving $3 billion annually from the lack of demand from the Bank of Ghana for the foreign exchange. So that reduces the pressure on the cedi immediately. And therefore you will see much slower depreciation of the currency. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, since we announced this, I put this out on my Facebook, there's been a lot of discussion with the BBC, Reuters, Bloomberg, and some misinterpretation. This has been misinterpreted as Ghana being against the use of US dollars in international transactions. This really is not the case. We are not on any mission against the use of US dollars in international transactions. Far from it. In fact, we want to accumulate more US dollars in our reserves. But we have a specific issue to deal with oil imports and the nexus between those oil imports and the prices of fuel and transport and food and utilities. And that is essentially what we are targeting, to exchange our gold for the oil, take that path, and therefore insulate the domestic economy, domestic industry from the persistent depreciation that we see in the currency that affects the cost of doing business and the cost of living. So that is...
We have always, as a continent, been milked out of our resources because of the exchange rate. Yeah, and that is why this is a bold step taken by the Ghanaians. And if other African countries can try their best to also make bold steps like this, what do you think we cannot achieve as a continent if we are united and have one mouth? Because when this angle does this, and they know they can't get one or two things from this angle anymore, they'll divert to the other angle, to use the other angle against the one that is opening their eyes against them. Now, if we are united, we love ourselves, every country in Africa are united with one voice, one heart, one mouth. Of course, is there anything that we cannot achieve? The dollar which we have decided to give glory to. And it's so unfortunate that this is the source of our downfall as a continent in Africa. Because we are not growing, no matter how we try. By year, you hear the amounts that each country in Africa is owing the World Bank in dollar, and when you convert that into the local currency, it's such a large amount of money. And you ask, when are they going to pay? When are we going to pay? We are frustrated here and there because of a printed paper, which we have decided to give all glory to. And that is a joy I have that Ghana could make a bold step like this. What do you think? Leave your comment there at the section, and I will see you in my next one. Until then, love yourself, love others, stay safe, stay positive. Bye for now.